Part 34. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zai. Chapter 331. Chapter 331. Why? He misses his grandma very much now and blames himself for not being able to take care of her himself. Goikale patted his shoulder to express comfort. She could understand how U11 was feeling now. How long will I have to stay here? U11 asked silently. It depends on you. When can you control your desire for blood and not hurt others, you can live like a normal person. She knew that for U11, who had just become a vampire, this was simply harder than climbing to the sky. This vampire's inherent nature was not something that could be adapted to in a day or two. Although he no longer resists human food, when he sees a wild beast, he will still pounce on it without hesitation and drain its blood. It would be very dangerous if he were allowed to go back. U11 hated himself. Why couldn't he control himself even for such a simple thing? Don't blame yourself, no one can avoid this. Compared with pure vampires, non-lip vampires can easily control themselves and not harm humans. Because they already had a strong awareness before the transformation. Why are you helping me? U11 turned to look at this legendary vicious vampire. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he would have thought that all vampires were as murderous as people say. It turned out that there was a unique vampire beside him. Goikale looked at him and fell silent. She didn't know why he was so nice to a strange human being. It was obviously against the strict rules of the vampire clan to transform a human at will, but she still did it. Why this is, she doesn't know. Since meeting this young man, she seemed to have become a little crazy, and even did some things that she shouldn't do and things that she couldn't possibly do. What is going on with me? Goikale reacted, avoided his eyes, and said, well, I just think that since I saved you, I have to take full responsibility for you. After all, I changed you, so I naturally have the responsibility to prevent you from harming me. Otherwise I'd get off myself. I don't know if her brothers now know that she has transformed into a human being. They must be very angry now and regret saving themselves. This time, he seems to have felt sorry for his brothers again. Are you because I did something I shouldn't have done? U11 looked at her straightly. How do you know? This kid must not be as capable of reading minds as Lunchenchi. Impossible. Very few people in the vampire clan have the ability to read minds. Except for Lunchenchi and his son Zaishi, they can be counted on one hand. Moreover, U11 was just transformed from a human being, so mind reading is even more impossible. The non-pure vampire is always the weakest one in the vampire family, and the one least likely to become stronger. Because I have watched vampire-themed TV series. The vampires have regulations. Vampires cannot transform humans at will, otherwise they will have to pay a price. It seems that this human being knows a lot about the vampire clan, and they just made it up randomly, but the thing they made up is probably too accurate. U11 looked at Goikale's frowning eyebrows and said with a smile, don't worry, I will protect you. Goikale's eyes were blank and he was stunned for a moment. End of this chapter. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zai. Chapter 332. Chapter 332, Protect You. It's a joke, he, a little human, can protect her. As long as he doesn't hold her back, she'll be thankful. As long as you protect yourself, I don't have to worry about you, Goikale said with a smile, but she still felt warm in her heart. It was the first time she heard him tell him to protect her. If these words had been spoken to her by Lunchenchi, she would have been happily incoherent, but the young man in front of her only looked a little like Lunchenchi between his eyebrows, but he was not him after all. What are you thinking about? U11 asked, snapping his fingers in front of the dazed Goikale. I was thinking. Goikale thought for a while and decided not to tell him, otherwise it would be bad if he misunderstood him. Then he changed his mind and asked, if you like someone, but that person likes she is my sister, they love each other very much, and they also have a lovely baby. Will you choose to let him go? Goikale asked. She wanted to seek a little comfort from his mouth so that she could put him down. He puts it down. Of course you have to let it go. If you don't let it go, you'll be hurting yourself. No one will feel sorry for you, U11 said, but every word touched the depths of Goikale's heart. Maybe he was telling the truth. You're right, Goikale said with a wry smile. To be honest, for hundreds of years, she has been in love with Lungenchi and suffered tremendously. She was indeed looking for abuse. But she couldn't let it go no matter what. That person is the boy you like. U11's tone was not a question, but an affirmation. How do you know? How come this guy knows everything? It's as if he really has the ability to read minds. You can tell by your infatuation. U11 lowered his head, not knowing why he felt a slight sense of loss in his heart. Goikale subconsciously touched his face. It seemed that everyone could see his feelings for Lungenchi, but he was the only one who turned a blind eye. I think you should let go of the past and start a new life. After all, you have eternal life. You can't love only one person forever. At least look at the person in front of you in 100 years. U11 lowered his head and looked at. You can't tell what kind of expression he had on his face, but you can tell from his words that he was hinting at Goikale. How could Goikale not see his feelings for her? But every time he acted as if he didn't know, just because he still couldn't let go of Lungenchi, and seemed to still have the slightest nostalgia for him. After getting no response from Goikale for a long time, U11 suddenly turned his head and saw that there was nothing around him. When did she leave? Did she hear what she just said? When Goikale came back, it was already 2 or 3 in the morning. Where have you been? He was not worried about her, because he knew that she seemed to be familiar with the terrain in this back mountain better than anyone else, and her ferocious fighting power did not need to worry about her being attacked by wild beasts. Here you go. Goikale suddenly took out a glass of blood from nowhere. U11 was speechless in surprise. He thought that she had left for so long to kill wild animals. Didn't she say that she could no longer harm the wild animals here? Idiot, this is ordinary sour plum juice. I let you drink it, just to satisfy your temptation and save you from getting sick later. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zai. Chapter 333. Chapter 333 Sensitive. U11 felt warm in his heart. Although Goikale seemed indifferent on the surface, he was not bad at his big breasts. Maybe she also likes herself, but it's hard to tell. Lele, what did you call me? U11 was interrupted by Goikale's shock before he finished speaking. U11 looked at Goikale's eyes that were gradually turning red. His mouth was trembling and he didn't know whether he should continue speaking. Don't call me Lele from now on, Goikale said and threw the sour plum juice in his hand to U11. It was only in the past that his mother and brothers would call him this. Now, my mother no longer exists, and my brothers don't seem to call her by her name as usual. Did I remind you of any bad memories? U11 looked at her worriedly. He was really stupid. He should have known better and shouldn't have brought it up. Otherwise, he might have confessed his love successfully by now. Goikale glanced at him indifferently and did not answer his question directly. Instead, he said calmly, cherish your loved ones. Your life is eternal, but they are not. Then can I change them? U11 said anxiously. He didn't want to lose his relatives. No, Goikale said angrily. This kid actually learned to push his limits. And he also guessed this answer. After all, Goikale had seriously violated the rules of the vampire clan for tens of thousands of years by saving him. From then on, U11 worked hard to restrain his desire for blood every day. When he was a little hungry, he would eat the food that Goikale brought back from the human world, causing Goikale to run to the city center every now and then. In order not to make more trips, Goikale specially brought back a few sacks, but they were already eaten by U11 in just 3 days. Goikale is really tired of serving an ancestor with a big stomach. Could it be that you were often hungry when you were a human being, and now someone is waiting on you and want to eat back what you didn't eat before? Goikale endured the princess's temper. This boy was the first man that she was so willing to do. They stayed at the back of the school for more than a month. U11 made rapid progress. Perhaps because of his desire to see his relatives, he quickly learned how to control his desire for blood. Goikale tried to lure him with wild beasts several times, but U11 could easily control them and even remained unmoved. It seems that U11's self-control ability has reached a very high level. As long as he does not harm humans, he should have no problem staying with his relatives for decades or 100 years. At the same time, Goikale also didn't understand a question: why haven't his brothers sent vampires over to get rid of U11? Don't they know? I can't worry about that much anymore, just take it one step at a time. Early the next morning, Goikale planned to take U11 back to his family so that they could briefly spend more than 10 years of family time together. When they arrived at a villa, their grandmother, father, stepmother, and younger sister stood at the door to greet them. Because he knew how long time was, U11 no longer cared about the past, but cherished the time with his relatives even more. Grandma, Dad, Mom, Sister, we will live together forever from now on. U11 looked at his family with a smile. Although he had a complete family until he was an adult, he did not feel that it was too late. It's still too late. End of this chapter. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 334. Chapter 334. Like. Goikale looked at the scene of the big family hugging each other. It was very warm, but it made Goikale's nose sore. If the father and mother are still alive, then their family can live together happily forever like them. However, it is impossible now. That's why she told U11 to cherish everything he has now. Don't be like her, waiting until you lose something before you understand the true meaning of cherishing the word. Who is this, father? You quickly noticed Goikale. In fact, as early as more than a month ago, when he was in the hospital, he had already noticed Goikale, who was unknown to the side. But at that time, he was only thinking about his son. With his mother, there was no time to think about the relationship between this young lady and his son. But if you think about it carefully, you should be able to see it. She must be my sister-in-law. U11's sister was the first to jump out and excitedly held Goikale's hand, as if she was really her sister-in-law. The smile on this girl's face is actually somewhat similar to Yang Zizi's. Innocent and lively, she reminded her of her sister. U11 stood up a little embarrassed and admitted generously without any hesitation, "Yes, this is my girlfriend." Goikale was stunned. In order to make his family happy, there was no need for this kid to drag her along. No, just when Goikale was about to deny it, U11 suddenly pulled him to his side and put his hand on her waist naturally. "Grandma, parents, let me formally introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Grandma's granddaughter-in-law, my parents' daughter-in-law, and my sister's sister-in-law." U11's face was so proud. He was so awesome. Broken. Good, 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 what a good girl. Grandma liked her very much. She pulled her and looked her up and down. The more she looked at her, the more she liked her. Goikale was a little flattered. Growing up, although on the surface she was the beloved princess of the blood clan, in fact most people only respected her and did not really like her. And she saw an extremely sincere light in the eyes of this kind old woman. This old man seems to really like her. And Goikale also seemed to like this old lady very much. Father Yu and stepmother on the side also seemed to like Goikale very much, and the smiles on their lips never disappeared. Come on, stop standing, come in quickly, I'll show you the room first. Goikale originally wanted to continue drifting in the human world for a while, but U11 dragged her to death and sent him home. Now it's better. He was mistaken for U11's girlfriend, and now he is still grandma was forced to stay. U11's parents were very kind and did not let Goikale sleep in the guest room. Instead, they slept in the second bedroom on the second floor. U11 was in the master bedroom, which happened to be facing each other. After putting away their luggage, U11's parents invited them to go downstairs for dinner. Knowing that you are coming today, I specially cooked some dishes for you. I don't know if they are delicious or not. Brother, sister-in-law, and mom haven't cooked for a long time. This time, in order to welcome you back, I specially cooked a few dishes. You must eat them all. My sister is an eccentric little girl. Every move, every frown, and every smile is very immersive. The family was happily eating together at the same table. It was strange that Goikale didn't feel like an outsider. He seemed to really regard himself as U11's girlfriend and a member of the family. End of this chapter. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 335. Chapter 335 is here. Before going to bed at night, U11's stepmother was very cautious. She would ask them every few seconds if they had any sleeping habits, if there was any improper arrangement, and if they could sleep in such a room layout. It can be said that he is extremely careful. He is also extremely enthusiastic. They returned to their rooms under the worried eyes of their stepmother. But the stepmother was still worried that the two children would not sleep well. Finally, she went through it in her head, thinking about whether there was anything she wasn't prepared for. Thinking about it carefully, it seems that there is no more. Finally she walked downstairs, and her father happened to be sitting on the sofa, looking very nervous. He originally wanted to follow her, but as a grown man, he could not be as virtuous and considerate as his wife. What's going on? Are they all asleep? When Father Yu saw his wife, he quickly stood up and asked worriedly. They must have slept. I don't know if they will feel uncomfortable when they wake up tomorrow. The stepmother was very worried, although he was extremely meticulous. Mom and Dad, why haven't you gone to bed yet? It's already past 12 o'clock. Suddenly, my sister took an empty milk cup and glanced at the wall clock on the wall. She walked to the kitchen, washed the cup casually and put it back in its place. She walked to them and said, "Are you worried about my brother and sister-in-law? You may not be used to sleeping when you go home for the first time." My sister knows her parents very well, especially her mother. Her heart is completely focused on the children. When the stepmother saw her sister, she immediately remembered that there was indeed one thing she had not done yet. "I'm going to warm up a cup of milk for U11 and the others." Then she came back and patted her sister on the shoulder angrily, and scolded, "I'm just thinking about it. You yourself don't know how to help your brother and sister-in-law warm a cup together." My sister said she was very innocent. She was already used to it. If you can change the habit of more than 10 years, you can change it. When the obedient sister saw that her mother was angry, she immediately stepped forward, took the cup from her stepmother's hand, looked at her stepmother flatteringly and said, "Mom, let me do it. Next time I will remember to heat up a cup for my brother and sister-in-law." Smiling and putting the milk in the microwave. "Mom and Dad, you go to bed first, don't worry." My sister smiled and urged her parents to go to bed. After all, standing here and worrying is not an option. It is better to wait until tomorrow to ask them how they slept before making improvements. It's not too late. Father Yu looked at his sensible little daughter and smiled, holding his wife's hand and coaxing her back to the room to sleep. Seeing his wife's love for his son, he felt really happy and satisfied at the same time. Actually, he had been wondering whether his wife would be unhappy because of U11's existence. It seemed that he was overthinking it. The younger sister put the hot milk on the tray, carried it upstairs, and knocked on the door of her brother and sister-in-law's rooms respectively. The two of them had a perfect understanding and opened the door to the room at the same time. "Brother and sister-in-law, this is the milk I warmed for you. Drinking a glass of milk before going to bed will help you sleep." The younger sister stood between the two people and said with a smile. The two people had a clear understanding of each other. They reached out their hands at the same time and touched the same cup at the same time. My younger sister lowered her head and snickered. She felt that this scene was very abusive to her, a single dog, but at the same time, she felt that this couple was very good to drink, even better than her idol. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 336. Chapter 336. I want to stay with you. Both of them noticed their sister's excited expression, and Goikale quickly took his hand away. U11 raised the corners of his mouth slightly, picked up a glass of milk and handed it to Goikale. Goikale was stunned for a moment. "Sister-in-law, take it quickly," her sister reminded Goikale, and then she reacted and took the milk handed over by U11 dully. "Sister-in-law, isn't my brother very considerate?" the younger sister said in an eccentric way as she approached Goikale. What his sister said made Goikale wonder what to do. "Okay, the milk has been delivered. You can wash the milk cup later. Although this couple is easy to drink, if they drink too much, it will be a naked dog abuse. She is obviously a single dog. Drink quickly. I'll wash the cup after you finish it," U11 said and drank the milk in one gulp. Goikale was very satisfied. It seemed that U11 had completely adapted to life in the human world and had no resistance to liquid milk. Goikale also drank the milk in one gulp. U11 took the empty cup from Goikale's hand and disappeared in a flash. "Hey!" Goikale was anxious and wanted to stop this guy. It seemed that this guy couldn't completely control his speed. He probably got used to it when he was in the back hill of school, and this habit happened to be caught by Goikale. Kale ignored it. Such an extremely fast and obvious speed will definitely make people suspicious, especially at home. It will definitely scare them. U11 washed the dishes and put away the cups, then turned around and saw Goikale. "Slow down, this is your home, not the back of the school," Goikale reminded helplessly. "But this cannot be blamed on U11, he has already done a good job." "I'm sorry." U11 bowed his head and apologized. He really couldn't control it. At this time, when my sister was about to go out to the bathroom, she suddenly saw this scene. The brother and sister-in-law stood face to face, but from the sister's perspective, they looked at each other affectionately. "Oh my God, what kind of magical couple are these?" my sister screamed in her heart. She felt like she was about to take a bite of these CPS. This visual looks like the male and female protagonists are looking at each other affectionately. It didn't work anymore. When my sister saw this scene, a romance novel immediately popped into her head. Inspiration came. My sister even forgot to go to the bathroom. She always liked writing as a hobby. She immediately ran into the room, picked up a pen and started writing down the inspiration they gave her. "Go to bed early," U11 said. "Why are you just like your mother?" Goikale said as he turned around and went upstairs. "Huh," U11's instinctive reaction. "Since you changed, when have you slept?" Goikale rolled his eyes at him. "I'm not doing this to avoid making them suspicious." U11 looked at her aggrievedly. Goikale waved his hand and gave up. When he walked into the room and was about to close the door behind his back, A big hand suddenly touched the door. Goikale turned her head and looked at U11, who was showing off to her with confusion. "What are you doing?" His tone was full of gunpowder, which made U11 handsome for only 3 seconds. "I want to stay with you," U11 said directly. No, Goikale refused without hesitation. In the human world, men and women will gossip when they are in the same room. Although they are already considered to be boyfriend and girlfriend, it cannot develop so fast. End of this chapter. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 337. Chapter 337, Make Her Happy. "But I'm afraid," U11 immediately changed his look to a soft and weak one. Goikale glanced at him with disgust. A grown man was actually scared. "Let me stay with you. I'm used to you being by my side every night." U11 thought of the more than a month in the back of the school. If only he could live like that for the rest of his life, then Goikale would. "You will never leave yourself." However, in the human world, he still has concerns. Goikale really couldn't resist this shameless U11, so he let him in by default. U11 was so excited that he followed Goikale into the room and closed the door behind him. At this time, my sister really couldn't sleep because she got stuck again after writing 10,000 words, so she came to look for inspiration from her brother and sister-in-law. But she didn't expect that when she looked for it, she saw such an amazing scene. Another precious inspiration. My sister rushed to write an article again. Goikale was playing on the computer, while U11 sat quietly aside. In the end, I felt really bored, so I invited Goikale to play games with him. Under U11's stubborn entanglement, he has never been exposed to games that fascinate humans, and finally compromised and played with him. Today is Friday and tomorrow is the weekend, so there will be a lot of novices. They are all primary school students who steal their parents' mobile phones to play games in the middle of the night. And some primary school students should not be underestimated. But Goikale's technology is unprecedentedly bad. I have been cheating on my teammates all the time, and I have made them use bad words several times. "Why are they scolding me?" Goikale said that he was innocent and had done nothing. "Why should they scold themselves?" Sometimes, when the princess of Goikale gets angry, she starts to scold her. U11 laughed non-stop next to him. His girlfriend is really cute. "No more playing." Goikale put the phone aside. "How about I scold her back for you?" U11 saw his wife getting angry and coaxed her. "Need not." But was rejected miserably. "I'll take you to a place." U11 pulled Goikale up. "Where to?" Before Goikale could finish speaking, U11 had already led her out of the window. "This boy is so blatant, what will happen if he is discovered?" In just a few seconds, U11 took Goikale to a large amusement park with the largest Ferris wheel in the country. "Where is this place?" Goikale asked, feeling that this place was very dreamy and beautiful. U11 casually snapped his fingers, and all the lights in the playground turned on. Colorful lights illuminate the dark earth. "Wow, it's so beautiful." Goikale had never seen such a beautiful place. "Hurry up, we only have 1 hour." U11 quickly pulled Goikale and ran into the playground. He took her around the entire amusement park in the dead of night, all for free. But these projects are just like playing house for Goikale. It seems that no matter how exciting the project is, she feels that it is ordinary. U11 felt that Goikale didn't seem to be very interested in these things, so he took her to play some more dreamy projects. For example, a carousel. That's right, the romantic feeling came up immediately. She sat on the merry-go-round and listened carefully to the beautiful music. She felt that the world was much quieter. End of this chapter. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 338. Chapter 338. My sister looks to her brother and sister-in-law for inspiration. He, sitting on the carousel next to her, took the most precious photos of her. The hour ended quickly, all the lights went out, and darkness returned. But they did not return home quickly, but walked hand in hand in the dark night. Perhaps this is the time for vampires. You can only go out for a walk in the dead of night, so as to ensure that you don't scare humans or harm them. They returned to their respective rooms at 5 o'clock in the morning. Because the work and rest time of Yu's father's family is very regular. Unless there are any special circumstances, I usually go to bed before 12 o'clock in the evening and get up from 5 to 5:30 in the morning. I only sleep 5 hours a day, which seems to have become a habit. At 5 o'clock sharp, my sister quietly wanted to see what her brother and sister-in-law were doing so that she could continue writing her novel. To put it aside, the relationship between brother and sister-in-law is exactly the same as in the novel, and the possibility of it becoming popular is not small. Just when she was trying to open the crack of the door to her sister-in-law's room and sneak a peek inside, the doors to the two rooms were suddenly opened. Sister immediately acted like she was passing by. Goikale was amused by his sister's silly appearance. "Well, the weather is particularly nice today. I'm going to exercise, and you guys?" My sister looked them up and down, then asked with a grin, "Did you sleep well?" "Very good," Goikale smiled and nodded, even though she didn't need to sleep at all. "That's good. Judging from my sister-in-law's tone, she must have slept really well last night." "Then I'm going to be an ant." My sister suddenly approached Goikale and said with a smile. Goikale was shocked. This sister's imagination is really big. U11 was also shocked at the same time. His sister is only 15 years old and is still a junior high school student. What is going on in her mind? Could it be that she matures prematurely? Looking at both of them looking embarrassed, they must be close to becoming ants. Suddenly, my stepmother's voice calling for breakfast sounded from downstairs. They walked to the dining table and sat down. Unexpectedly, the stepmother's first words were, "How did you sleep? Is there anything that needs to be changed?" "Mom, don't worry, we all slept well," U11 said with a smile. There were tears in the stepmother's eyes. Although this was not the first time that U11 called her mom, she didn't know why her nose felt sore when the child called her mom and she always wanted to cry. "Perhaps it's because I'm older and I move too easily." "Brother and sister-in-law, are you planning to go on a date today?" my sister said uneasily while sipping porridge. Father Yu smiled and generously showed a credit card, handed it to them, and said, "The money in it is not much, only 50 million. It's fun." My sister's eyes lit up when she heard this number. 50 million is not much. Her daily pocket money is limited to less than 100 yuan by her mother. "Brother and sister-in-law, take me with you, I'm very good." The younger sister blinked her big eyes and looked at her brother and sister-in-law innocently. "Hold your thighs tightly, and you will be able to drink spicy food." "Why are you being a light bulb when your brother and sister-in-law are dating? Don't forget, you have ballet class today," the stepmother reminded her sister sternly, which was several degrees different from her attitude towards U11. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 339. Chapter 339 Time. The younger sister glanced at her mouth and was very unconvinced. Why did her brother take such good care of him when he came back, but she was forced to study hard every day, and even had to go to various cram schools for one weekend? Actually, they don't need money at all. They went out to play last night and didn't need any money at all. But in order not to upset his stepmother, U11 still accepted the money. During the day, Yu's father and stepmother went to work in the company, and his sister also went to ballet class. Now, apart from the servants, Only U11 and Goikale were left at home. I will explain it to my parents. U11 sat on the sofa and said to Goikale. Explain what? Goikale looked at him and asked. Explain that we don't have that kind of relationship. U11 glanced at her from time to time, wondering what she was thinking. I know clearly that she may have no feelings for him, but I just take a chance and think that she should like me a little bit. Isn't it? Goikale asked as he ate the fruit. As early as last night, she seemed to be able to understand her own heart. It turned out that this was what it felt like to like someone. This man made her completely let go of her life. Hundreds of years passed, and the person who saved her finally appeared. Huh, U11 was stunned, not knowing whether what she just said was true or false. I mean, I like you. Goikale lowered his head a little shyly. I don't know why, but I like the same person, but my feelings toward Lungenchi and him are completely different. Really, really? U11 asked again in disbelief. Certainly. U11 hugged her excitedly. He was so excited at the moment that he didn't know what to do. He wanted to scream loudly now and tell everyone in the world that Goikale fell in love with him and that they were now boyfriend and girlfriend. But the next moment, U11 took into account the identity gap between the two people. Would your family agree? My brothers are very nice people. When he sees you, he will definitely like you. In fact, she was not 100% sure that her brothers would accept U11. After all, he is not a pure vampire. In any case, it will take a long time to bring him back to the vampire clan. Let's wait until the time comes. Time flies very fast, and both Yu's father and stepmother are gradually aging. However, because they have taken good care of themselves, the aging rate is not very fast. However, due to long-term fatigue and overwork, their bodies are getting worse day by day due to the passage of time. My younger sister has also grown up. Compared with the childish little face before, she is now more mature. Because of her outstanding appearance and prominent family, she has already dated several boyfriends, all of whom are from famous families. Master. And their family does not seem to have the concept of being a good match. Her parents will unconditionally support any boyfriend her sister chooses. My younger sister has had several boyfriends, but U11 and Goikale have always remained the same. However, the only appearance in the family has not changed at all. U11, who still looks like a high school student, makes everyone in the family think that this child is very good at taking care of himself. But if you think about it carefully, you have never seen this child take care of himself. After all, at almost 30 years old, I still look like a high school student. Not only did Yu's father and stepmother not suspect anything, but they also thought he had a frozen-age constitution. After all, there are so many frozen-aged male gods in the entertainment industry now, so it's not surprising. End of this chapter. The fake daughter can be either salty or sweet. Author, Wu Zizai. Chapter 340. Chapter 340. Go back. Time flies like an arrow, and in a blink of an eye, we still have to face what we should face. 60 years later. U11 stood helplessly in front of the grave and shed 2 lines of tears. He wanted to transform his parents and sister, but his transformation had already made Goikale very embarrassed. He couldn't be so selfish. Come back to the vampire clan with me. Goikale patted his shoulder, turned around and left first. U11 took one last look at the grave, and finally followed Goikale and left. Happiness is always so short-lived. Fortunately, I caught this happy time in time. Will you blame me? Goikale suddenly stopped and asked with his back to U11. U11 sobbed, wiped the tears on his face, and said, of course not. How could he blame him? This is a path that all human beings must go through, and no one can escape it. And his life should have disappeared, but she violated the vampire clan and transformed herself, which was the most benevolent and righteous thing to do. They will be reincarnated. You can go and see them when the time comes. Goikale turned to look at him and said. Really, U11 was overjoyed. He thought that reincarnations were all made up by humans. Although there was some scientific evidence, it was still not sufficiently confirmed. But when Goikale said this, U11 believed it instantly. I didn't expect that the theory of reincarnation is actually true. Of course, sometimes, you humans are not stupid, Goikale said with a smile. U11 looked at Goikale and smiled. In this way, he could see his family again, and he didn't know whether they would be happy. Then when will they be reincarnated? It should be soon, Goikale said. I want to go see them. Goikale looked at U11 and originally wanted to refuse, but in the end he couldn't stand the glimmer of expectation in U11's eyes, so he finally nodded and agreed to his unreasonable request. Goikale took U11 to a large hospital. The three of them will be born here at the same time. Goikale led U11 to the door of the maternal door. After a while, the baby's loud cry came from outside the delivery room. Your father and your mother have been brother and sister in this life. They have a deep love for each other and will hold each other hostage throughout their lives. Your sister will become the daughter of a wealthy family and grow up with your father as childhood sweethearts. Two families. They are family friends, and they are married to each other. This may mean that the daughter was the father's lover in his previous life. As long as they can live happily, then he will be satisfied. You go to the nursery to see them, I'll go out and wait for you first, Goikale said and walked out of the hospital. After a while, U11 came out. He probably didn't look. Why so fast? Goikale asked. I didn't go to see it. U11 lowered his head and said with a heavy heart. Goikale could understand him, patted him on the shoulder and said, if you want to know something about them, you can ask me at any time. After saying that, she turned around and left. Counting it, it must have been 50 or 60 years since she left the vampire clan and came to the human world to relax. Since none of her brothers came to her so far, it meant that they respected her choice, but he didn't know whether they respected her choice of a non-pure vampire. Goikale shook his head. Don't think about anything, let's talk about it after returning to the vampire clan. End of this chapter.